Okay, we're continuing with the Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by me, Pete Rogers. This is Sophocles. Sophocles was the great playwright of the ancient Greeks. And they had a contest every year, the Dionysia, where they would have an award for the best tragedy. And he won that award like 18 times. And usually if he didn't win, he'd be second place. The first great tragedian playwright was Aeschylus. And Aeschylus himself had fought in the Persian War. Sophocles was just a little younger, but he had grown up around the time in the aftermath of the Persian War, where the Greeks had defeated the much greater in size Persian Empire, and they were, deservedly so, very proud of that. And it was sort of magnificent. And, thank God the ancient Greeks won, because otherwise there would be no ancient Greeks. They would have been slaves of the Persians. And, the Persians were a typical, backward. Almost all countries since the beginning of time have been backward-ass dictatorships where there's some brutal tyrant who says, do as I say or I'll kick your butt, and doesn't let anybody do anything creative or interesting. That's the nature of human societies, okay? Something like the Greeks were like a miracle. The Greeks sort of invented free thinking and sophisticated thinking, all the words we use to describe patterns of thinking, schools of thought, and philosophy. They come from the ancient Greeks. The Stoics, the empiricists, the Epicureans, okay, the skeptics, the cynics, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, all this stuff. All these guys are ancient Greeks. Thucydides, Herodotus, okay. All right, Sophocles was a big shot in ancient Greece. He was a stratego for a while, a general of their armies. He was the treasurer of the Delian League of Athens, okay. Athens was the big dogs, up until the Peloponnesian War when they lost to Sparta. Pericles sort of got things started like an idiot, and then he died in a plague, and then Athens lost, okay? But, Sophocles grew up around musicians and warriors, and he really admired all of that. He was, a real patriotic guy. The tragedian who followed him was Euripides, and Euripides was also magnificent. Aristophanes was a comic playwright. He wrote Clouds, the one mocking Socrates, for example. Sophocles sort of expanded Greek theater. He added a third actor, allowing you to create a psychological drama with tension and triangles and all that kind of stuff. He had more props and more scenery. He was making their theater more sophisticated. His greatest play was Oedipus the King. And Aristotle had said that Oedipus the King was the greatest tragedy ever written. He also wrote the magnificent Antigone. Antigone is the one where her two brothers fought, and then King Creon was not going to bury one of her brothers because he had gone against Thebes. And then she tried to give him an honest burial, and then Creon sentenced her to death. Creon's son was in love with Antigone. And once he saw her sentenced to death, he committed suicide. And then his wife, when she saw he committed suicide, she committed suicide. So by being a jerk, Creon had ruined the whole kingdom for everybody, okay? And Antigone had said, I obeyed the laws of the gods, which are above yours, the laws of a mortal man, by giving my brother an honest burial, okay? So it's a magnificent play, Antigone. It's fantastic stuff, okay? And he wrote other plays, Oedipus of Colonus, Philoctetes, and other stuff, okay? This stuff in red, I'm going to skip that because that's sort of background history of him. It's not going to be as interesting to the audience here. Okay, he says, the oaths of a woman I inscribe in water. Yeah, of all the societies ever on this planet Earth, the one that has the most respect for women is Christianity. The ancient Greeks kind of thought a woman is something to be seen and not heard. She's somebody who belongs in the house, and the best ornament for a woman, he said, was silence. They felt she should not talk much, especially not when strangers were present. Okay. He said, children are the anchors of a mother's life. Up until birth control, women would typically have about 10 kids and spend most of their time around the home raising those kids, nursing the babies, raising them. And some people say, oh, what a drag, spending all the time with babies. Let me tell you something. Modern women are not that happy. I see a lot of modern women. The average modern woman's only having about 1.5 kids, okay? Then she grows up, she's got nothing to do, okay? I've seen that a lot. And then the woman starts wandering around, getting herself into trouble, getting herself into mischief, throwing the family money in the garbage can with vacations, having an affair, getting divorced, destroying the whole family. And they become the destruction of their own families. That's pretty common in the Western world nowadays. Believe me, I'm familiar with it. And also, what makes a woman happy? If you talk to women when they're older, late 40s, early 50s, and afterwards, everyone I've ever seen that has kids says the kids were the greatest joy of their life. So why go work in some crappy job that's going to make you miserable and no one cares about you when you're the queen of the house with your kids? You're the most important person in the world. And then a lot of them, they're delaying their pregnancies till they're in their 30s, trying to go for in vitro fertilization, and it doesn't work so well. And then a lot of them never have kids, and they're all sad. And their SMV, sexual market value, is just going down. And then after a while, they can't even attract a good man anymore, and then they're really sad. They would have been better off just getting married in their 20s. You can still have some type of work and career, but if you ignore family, your biological clock is ticking. Okay, Sophocles continues. One word frees us from all the weight and pain in life. That word is love. The most beautiful human deed is to be useful to others. Always desire to learn something useful. Kindness gives birth to kindness. A stranger in a strange land. That was the title of an Iron Maiden song, heavy metal song. Ignorance is a tough evil to conquer. Fortune favors the bold. That same quote has been attributed to Virgil, the playwright, the Roman playwright who wrote the Aeneid. Okay, men of poor intellect often ignore the good that could be within their hands until it is lost. Okay. And he says, Aeschylus creates moral tales instinctively. Euripides portrays men as they really are. Sophocles portrays them as they ought to be. And it was also Aristotle who said that the playwrights, the poets and the playwrights, were the most important men in society, more important than the historians, because they show man, unlike a historian who only shows man as he has been, the playwright shows man as he ought to be. And that gives the young person who reads that a view in their mind's eye, a vision of how life can be and how they can improve themselves, what they can strive towards. And that's sort of like their roadmap to a good future. And he's right. So anyways, those are the quotes of Sophocles. I hope you found that helpful.